Hi guys, in this video we're going to be talking about diffusion. We'll firstly look at solutions and parts of a solution. We'll then define diffusion, talk about the cause of diffusion, and give an example. So before we get into diffusion, we need to talk about solutions and the different parts. So a solution consists of a solute dissolved in a solvent. So the example we have here, the solute, the thing that's going to be dissolved, is salt. And the solvent, the thing that does the dissolving, is water. Now this is a good example because in biological systems, so in living things like the cells in our body or the cells in plants, water is the solvent most of the time. And a way that we can remember this is by using a bad European accent and saying water is the solvent, which sounds really silly, but is an easy way for us to remember which one is, or the difference between the solvent and the solute. Now it's important to know that the solute does not disappear when it's dissolved in the water. Rather, it gets dissolved and dispersed across the solution. So for example, if you put a teaspoon of salt into a glass of water, you may not see the salt because it's dissolved. You've still got a clear solution. However, that salt is still there. If you were to drink the water, you would be able to taste the salt. So it's not disappearing anywhere, it's just taking on a different form. In chemistry, we call this an aqueous form. Now, concentration refers to the ratio of solute to solvent particles. So here we've got two beakers, and we can see that one's a lighter color than the other one. Now, this is fine for solutions where the solute is colored and you can actually see them. But as I said, there are some or many solutions where the solution is going to be clear. So for example, salt or sugar. So the more solute to solvent there is, the more concentrated a solution it is. So you can see we've only got 5 particles of solute here, the red triangles, compared to all of these white circles. So there's a fairly low, compared to this one, which we'll get to in a second, a low concentration of solute particles to solvent particles. As we move over to the higher concentration, there is more of these red particles, about the same number of the white particles, but because there's more of the red, the solute, we now have a higher solute to solvent ratio. So we say that this solution has a higher concentration or is more concentrated. Okay, now we can get into diffusion. Now diffusion is the passive movement, that means that it does not use energy, or ATP, of the solute, so the thing that is dissolved in the solvent, from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. And you can see here in this example that we've got these dye molecules, the red dots, in water molecules, the blue dots. Now you can see that this has just been put into the water and there is a high concentration of dye molecules relative to the water molecules around it. Over this side of the beaker, there is a high concentration of water molecules compared to the dye molecules. So these dye molecules are going to diffuse throughout the water until they reach equilibrium. That is the point where there is the same amount of solute molecules to the solvent molecules across the whole solution. And you might even go so far as to call this solution homogeneous. Now, as I said, this is a passive process, which means that it's moving with the concentration gradient. So the concentration gradient is the difference in concentration between the two parts. So if we have a higher concentration here to a lower concentration here, those solute particles are going to move towards the lower concentration and down the concentration gradient. And that is, as I said, passive and does not require any energy. Once again, diffusion is passive and does not use energy. This is a really important thing, that it's just a chemical process that occurs and it's not a particular biological process. There are biological processes in the body which are active and use energy. This is not one of them. Instead, what's causing this motion is, or this movement, is what is referred to as Brownian motion. And that is the particles in a liquid, and you might remember from year 7 that the particles in objects vibrate, and the faster or the more heat that they have, or heat energy, the hotter they are, the faster they will vibrate. So in a liquid, they're vibrating reasonably fast compared to a solid, that is, and vibrating more if the liquid is hotter. So for this reason, diffusion occurs faster in hot water than it does in cool water, because basically those particles are vibrating around, and that vibration bumps the solute particles, so those solute particles move around your container. Alright, so let's have a look at an example of this. Now, an example that's often used for diffusion is spraying perfume in a room. Now in this case, the solvent, the thing that's doing the dissolving, is the air, and the solute is going to be the perfume droplets. So it's a little bit different to within a cell, but the process is exactly the same. So if we spray our perfume, you can see that to start off with, all those little droplets or molecules of perfume are going to be concentrated in the one spot. So we have a high concentration of perfume to air molecules over here. Conversely, we have a low concentration of perfume to air molecules over here because there's no perfume molecules, it's all air molecules. So we have a large concentration gradient between these two. So we're going to see these solute, these perfume molecules, move from this area of high concentration to this area of low concentration. And they are going to start spreading around the room. Now again, we have a higher concentration over in this area, but they have spread out a bit. So we've got more air in there now, so that concentration isn't as high as it was before. So therefore the difference between these two has come down, as illustrated by the smaller arrows. So we've still got that concentration gradient, but it's not as steep as it was before. As they spread out a little bit more, we still have a concentration gradient. There is still more perfume molecules over here than there is over here, so it's going to continue to move. But our concentration gradient is getting closer and closer to that equilibrium point, that point where there is the same amount of solute to solvent particles here as there is over here. Finally, we have them all spread out. So we've got the solute particles, these perfume particles, spread all across the room, and they are homogeneous. So there's the same amount in all different places of the room, and spread evenly all over the room. And this is equilibrium, and that is where diffusion stops because there is no longer any concentration gradient. We have the same concentration of perfume here as we do over here. Alright, in this video we have looked at diffusion. We have talked about solutions that diffusion occurs in. We have defined diffusion. We have as the process of a solute moving from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. We've talked about what causes this, as it is a passive process that is caused by a concentration gradient between two solutions or two areas of a solution, and Brownian motion moving that solute around. And we've given an example of perfume particles or droplets moving around a room by diffusion. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.